It started like any other ordinary morning. People were waking up, preparing for work, school, or the quiet routines of life. Birds were singing, traffic was moving, and somewhere someone was making tea, unaware that this day would change everything. Then slowly, almost imperceptibly at first, strange things began to appear in the sky. Tiny dots at first thought to be distant planes multiplied by the hundreds, hovering with a calm that felt almost unnatural. Within minutes, the sky was full of shapes that no human had ever seen before. They were huge, metallic, and gleaming, reflecting sunlight like mirrors. Some were circular, some angular, but all moved with a precision and speed that made the most advanced human aircraft look like toys. Panic spread quickly. Governments tried to assess the situation, but their communications were overwhelmed. Television networks interrupted their regular programming, showing images from cities and rural areas alike, where people were pointing at the sky, mouths open in shock. Social media erupted with videos and pictures, the world watching itself react in real time. Scientists argued, pilots tried to intercept the ships, and military forces prepared for a battle that seemed almost impossible to win. The aliens had arrived and the world was unprepared. Then came the broadcast. A calm, clear voice that no human could understand spoke through all devices at once: radios, televisions, phones, even the internet. The message was simple yet terrifying. Humanity was to be enslaved. Earth was a resource world. Humans were to be collected, trained, and sent to work in the alien empire. The words were shocking, but what made them even more horrifying was the way they were delivered. Not as a threat, but as a statement of fact. The aliens did not ask. They did not negotiate. They simply assumed that humans would comply. In the cities, people reacted in different ways. Some froze, unable to comprehend what was happening. Others ran, screaming through the streets, searching for family members or shelter. Governments called emergency meetings. Military leaders issued orders, and scientists worked frantically to understand the alien technology. But the humans on the ground, the ordinary men, women, and children, had their own thoughts. Fear, yes, but also anger. How dare anyone think they could take humanity without a fight? In small towns, communities came together. Neighbors who had barely spoken before now helped each other secure their homes, make plans, and protect the vulnerable. Farmers left their fields only long enough to gather their families, while in schools, teachers stayed behind with students until they could be safely evacuated. Everywhere, ordinary humans were discovering courage they had never known existed. The aliens assumed submission, but humans assumed survival. The first encounters were chaotic. Alien landing vehicles touched down in city squares, attempting to collect groups of people. At first, it seemed as though the aliens were unstoppable. Their technology was unlike anything humans had seen. Fields that prevented movement, beams that could lift a person into the air instantly, and drones that monitored every street and building. But humans are not predictable. When the first group of soldiers tried to round up a neighborhood, they met resistance that the aliens could not calculate. People fought back with whatever they had: sticks, bricks, tools, and in some places firearms. Even when overpowered, humans refused to be silent. They screamed, shouted, and called to others to keep fighting. It was not just the adults. Children hid, yes, but they also helped. Some slipped out of their homes to warn neighbors. Others tried to distract alien drones so their families could escape. In one small village, a child had learned to use an old ham radio. Using signals the aliens could not detect, the child warned surrounding towns of the approaching threat. The aliens had expected humans to be easy to control, but humans were clever. They adapted quickly, finding weaknesses in the alien approach that no one had imagined. In the skies above, human pilots tried to intercept the alien crafts. Jets darted up to face ships that dwarfed them in size. Missiles were fired, only to be blocked or deflected by shields humans could barely comprehend. Yet the pilots did not give up. They maneuvered through impossible paths, risking everything to protect their cities. Their bravery was not for glory. It was for family, friends, and the instinct to survive. Even when their weapons failed, they improvised, dropping flares, creating distractions, and finding ways to slow the alien forces. While chaos spread on the streets and in the skies, scientists were working tirelessly to understand the invaders. Laboratories filled with computers and experiments, as people from all over the world collaborated for the first time without barriers. They had never faced anything like this before, but fear often sharpens the mind. They studied alien materials, analyzed signals, and even tried to communicate. What they found was unexpected. The aliens were highly advanced, yes, but their understanding of human emotion, willpower, and ingenuity was shallow. The humans began to realize that while they could not match the aliens in technology, they could outthink them in ways that mattered. Among the alien invaders, confusion started to grow. Their scanners registered human behavior they could not explain. People running into danger to save strangers, comforting each other, or refusing to leave loved ones behind. It made no sense. On other worlds, these behaviors had never existed. The aliens were prepared for compliance, for panic, for fear, but never for defiance fueled by care, courage, and hope. Slowly, questions began to emerge among some of the alien commanders. Why were these humans so different? Why did fear inspire action instead of submission? Back on the streets, life continued in a strange mix of terror and determination. Families ran from city to city seeking safety. Volunteers carried supplies to those trapped in danger zones. Communities that had once competed for resources now shared everything, from food to shelter, with anyone who needed it. And everywhere, people told stories of courage, of sacrifice, of bravery that inspired those who heard them. Even the smallest acts, like a neighbor helping a frightened elderly person escape, became examples of the strength of the human spirit. In the midst of this, the aliens faced another challenge. They could not understand the concept of unity. Humans were not just resisting individually. They were resisting together. Every time an alien ship tried to take control of a town, the people had already organized defenses. Every time a capture mission succeeded, humans elsewhere acted to free the captives. The aliens realized that their calculations, their weapons, and their strategies were failing. Not because humans were stronger in a physical sense, but because they could not predict what humans would do next. By the end of the day, it was clear that the battle for Earth had begun, not in a single place but across the entire planet. The aliens had arrived thinking they would be able to enslave humanity in hours, maybe days. They had come for workers, for resources, and for control. What they found instead was a species united by courage, ingenuity, and an unshakable determination to survive. And for the first time in history, humans realized something powerful. The enemy was advanced, yes, but they had underestimated the one thing no weapon could conquer: the human heart. Night fell, but it brought no peace. Fires burned where battles had taken place. Families huddled together, unsure if they would see the next day. Yet amidst the fear and destruction, there was hope. People whispered plans, shared supplies, and promised to keep fighting. Even when sleep took them, dreams were filled with strategies, courage, and a belief that they could survive. Humanity had faced many challenges in its history, but never like this. And yet, the world had begun to understand something fundamental. Survival was not about waiting for rescue. It was about acting together and refusing to be broken. By the time dawn broke again, the humans who had survived the first encounter with the alien invaders were already planning the next steps. Streets that had been filled with chaos now held small groups of organized resistance. Scientists worked through the night to hack alien communication systems. Communities established safe zones. Pilots prepared for the next skirmish in the sky. And all around the planet, humans realized that they had a strength the invaders could never predict. The aliens had assumed humans were weak. They were about to learn that they were wrong. And somewhere above the clouds, the alien fleet observed silently. Their plans had not failed entirely, but they were beginning to encounter something they could not understand, something that challenged their assumptions. Fear had not broken humanity. Threats had not broken humanity. Even the threat of being enslaved had not broken humanity. The aliens had come expecting obedience, but what they found instead was defiance, intelligence, and an unyielding will to protect one another. The first day of the invasion ended not with the triumph of the aliens, but with the beginning of a fight that would test the courage and resilience of every human on Earth. Ordinary people had discovered extraordinary strength, and in doing so, they had begun a story that the universe would never forget. The second day of the invasion began with a strange quiet. People awoke to the sight of alien ships still hovering in the skies, massive and silent, like dark clouds that refused to move. The streets were empty in many places, but that did not mean people had given up. In fact, the opposite was true. Humans were beginning to understand that survival would not come from hiding, but from action. They began organizing, planning, and preparing. What the aliens thought would be a quick conquest was turning into something far more complicated. In one city, volunteers moved quietly through alleys, carrying food, water, and medicine to those trapped in damaged buildings. They worked carefully, aware that any sudden movement could attract alien attention. Yet, despite the fear, there was determination in every step. The human spirit had not been crushed. Across the world, similar scenes unfolded. Farmers and townspeople dug makeshift shelters. Families reinforced their homes, and entire neighborhoods formed watches to warn of approaching alien patrols. The humans were learning quickly that coordination could make even the most advanced invaders struggle. The aliens, meanwhile, were puzzled. Their technology was unmatched. They had weapons that could destroy entire city blocks in seconds, surveillance, systems that monitored millions of humans at once, and transport vehicles that could capture hundreds in minutes. But they had not counted on human ingenuity. People were adapting faster than the aliens could predict. When one area was targeted, humans moved to a safer location, sometimes leaving behind false signs to confuse their attackers. When the aliens tried to communicate fear through destruction, humans used it as motivation to fight harder. The invaders could sense resistance, but they did not understand it. In the skies, human pilots were testing their limits. Jets and helicopters darted among the alien ships searching for weak points. Weapons often failed against alien shields, but pilots discovered that unpredictability worked. Rapid changes in altitude, sudden maneuvers, and teamwork allowed them to damage some alien drones, forcing others to retreat. Pilots shared their findings with each other, often using simple signals and gestures instead of advanced technology. The alien fleet could detect strategy, but they could not detect courage, and it became clear that courage was the human's greatest weapon. Even the smallest acts of bravery mattered. In one neighborhood, a group of children noticed an alien drone hovering near a nearby school. They could have hidden, but they instead created distractions, banging on walls, throwing stones, and shouting warnings to their parents. The drone became confused and moved away, allowing nearby families to escape. Across the planet, similar small actions multiplied. Each act of resistance, no matter how minor, added to the growing frustration among the aliens. They were beginning to see that humans were unpredictable in ways no technology could fully measure. Scientists played a critical role in this resistance. They studied the alien technology around them, learning how to manipulate it and even find its weaknesses. Groups of researchers, some who had never met in person, collaborated through secure networks, testing theories about shields, energy fields, and communication signals. They discovered patterns, learning to anticipate alien movements and relay that information to cities under attack. While the humans could not yet overpower the aliens entirely, they could delay them, distract them, and even occasionally repel them. Every success, no matter how small, built confidence. Humanity was beginning to fight back. The alien forces, on the other hand, were frustrated by what they could not predict. Their scanners could detect human numbers and movements, but they could not measure courage or resolve. Humans would rush into danger to protect each other, sometimes sacrificing their own safety. Parents risked everything for their children. Strangers helped each other without hesitation, and entire neighborhoods coordinated silently to frustrate the invaders' plans. For the first time, the aliens faced a problem they could not solve with weapons alone. Their mission had been to enslave humanity, but they were discovering that humans would never submit willingly. Even in areas where the aliens were initially successful, humans found ways to resist. Captured individuals quietly observed alien operations, memorizing routines and sharing this knowledge when they could escape. Groups of prisoners coordinated efforts to sabotage equipment or create distractions. Every time the aliens thought they had control, humans proved that control was an illusion. They used intelligence, empathy, and the ability to think creatively under pressure to fight back. The aliens were beginning to see that their advanced technology was not enough to dominate this species. Communication between humans became a lifeline. Messages were sent between cities, towns, and villages, warning of alien patrols and sharing tips for defense. Even when communication systems were damaged, humans improvised. They used runners, coded signals, and even reflected light from mirrors to send warnings. Communities that had never spoken before now worked together, creating a network of resistance. Each connection strengthened the humans' ability to survive and made the aliens' task even more difficult. Meanwhile, ordinary people showed acts of heroism that the aliens could not understand. In one city, an elderly man guided a group of children through underground tunnels to avoid capture. In another, a young woman stayed behind to carry medical supplies to injured neighbors, knowing she might be caught. In a remote village, farmers and townspeople stood together with simple tools, fending off alien landing units until reinforcements could arrive. These acts were not about fame or recognition, they were about protecting life and refusing to surrender. And every act was noticed by the aliens, leaving them more confused about human behavior. The aliens had expected fear to be enough. They had assumed that once humans saw their power, submission would follow. But they underestimated the core of humanity, the will to survive together. Humans were not just fighting for themselves, they were fighting for their families, friends, and communities. Fear became motivation, desperation became strategy. And as humans adapted to alien attacks, the invaders were forced to reconsider every plan. Even the young and the elderly contributed. Children found ways to create noise, block drones, or alert families, while the elderly offered guidance, knowledge of terrain, and strategies from years of experience. Each human brought something unique to the resistance. The aliens, who had only calculated strength in numbers, could not understand the value of spirit, knowledge, and creativity. It became increasingly clear that humans were fighting in ways that were not measurable, and that made them dangerous opponents. By midday, human forces, though scattered, had begun to form small coordinated units. City defenders, pilots, scientists, and ordinary citizens worked together in ways that blurred the line between military and civilian. Every small victory, such as stopping an alien patrol or rescuing a group of captives, was celebrated quietly but meaningfully. These successes boosted morale and gave hope to those still in danger. Humans were beginning to see that even a powerful enemy could be resisted when courage and teamwork came first. In the skies, alien commanders began to notice something alarming. Humans were adapting faster than expected. When they tried new weapons or tactics, humans found ways to respond creatively. Evacuations, counterattacks, and even simple distractions were frustrating the aliens' calculations. Orders that were supposed to be precise and effective were being ignored or circumvented. This unpredictability was unlike anything the aliens had encountered on other worlds. The humans' ability to learn quickly and act boldly made the invaders realize that this would not be an easy conquest. Even in the midst of chaos, hope persisted. Families reunited, communities rebuilt makeshift shelters, and ordinary people shared stories of courage. Each story inspired another, spreading resilience like wildfire. People began to understand that survival was not just about hiding or fighting, it was about connection, empathy, and refusing to give up. Across continents, humans were beginning to organize resistance movements without central leadership. They learned from each other, improvised, and found strength in unity. By the evening, the alien forces were exhausted by something they had never encountered: human unpredictability combined with unbreakable determination. Their plans were disrupted, their calculations unreliable, and their frustration growing. They had come for obedience, but they were being met with courage, intelligence, and defiance at every turn. Humans had not just survived the second day, they had adapted, learned, and fought back in ways that made the aliens doubt their ability to succeed. As night fell, humans took stock of the day's events. Some had lost homes, some had lost loved ones, but all had gained something equally important: understanding that they were stronger than they had ever imagined. They had faced an enemy that was meant to be unstoppable, yet they had survived. And with survival came hope. Hope that tomorrow could be even better, that humanity could continue to resist, and that together, they could find ways to protect what mattered most: life, family, and freedom. Above the clouds, alien ships hovered, silently. The commanders were beginning to understand that humans were unlike any species they had ever encountered. Technology alone would not win this war. Fear alone would not make humans submit. They had under. By the third day, the world had begun to change in ways no one could have imagined. People were no longer just surviving. They were learning to fight back with intelligence, courage, and creativity. Small towns, villages, and even city neighborhoods began forming networks to share information about alien movements, weak points, and safe zones. Ordinary people who had never led anything before suddenly found themselves organizing resistance, coordinating rescue operations, and inspiring others to stay strong. Fear was still there, but it was paired with determination and hope. Humans were discovering something extraordinary about themselves. In many cities, volunteers became leaders almost overnight. A man who had been a simple shopkeeper the day before was now guiding families through back streets to avoid alien patrols. A teacher who had been worried about her classroom was organizing food and medical supplies for hundreds of people trapped in shelters. Ordinary citizens were performing heroic acts without thinking of themselves. They had learned that survival depended on quick decisions, bravery, and the willingness to protect each other, no matter the risk. These small acts of courage spread quickly, giving strength to those who feared they could not continue. Humans were not just reacting, they were adapting. Scientists and engineers working around the clock were starting to understand alien technology. They could not yet control it, but they could observe patterns. They studied the way alien drones moved, the way energy shields flickered under certain conditions, and how communication signals could be intercepted or blocked. Teams of researchers shared information across continents using secure networks, encrypted signals, and even improvised devices to avoid detection. Every discovery made the humans stronger, and every mistake taught them how to improve. They were learning faster than the aliens had anticipated. In the skies, pilots were becoming legends. They flew in dangerous formations, distracting alien ships to allow civilians to escape. They improvised when weapons failed, using their instincts and experience to create opportunities for counterattacks. Some even used alien technology against the invaders. After careful study and experimentation, the alien fleet, once confident in its superiority, began to notice that human pilots were unpredictable and clever in ways they had not calculated. Every maneuver, every daring escape, added to a growing sense of frustration among the invaders. Meanwhile, on the ground, people continued to resist in the most human ways possible. Families helped each other evacuate, strangers shared food and medicine, and communities worked together to block alien patrols. Children, despite their fear, contributed in clever ways, signaling through lights, creating distractions, and warning adults of approaching dangers. Elders offered guidance, sharing knowledge of terrain and survival techniques from years of experience. Every person, no matter how small or seemingly insignificant, played a part in the growing resistance. The aliens, for the first time, were beginning to see something they could not quantify: human emotion and spirit. They scanned humans endlessly, trying to measure fear, obedience, and potential for control. But what they found was something foreign to them. Humans did not act like any species they had conquered before. Fear often inspired action instead of submission. Love and loyalty drove people to protect each other at great personal risk. Empathy created alliances and strategies that no machine could predict. The aliens had underestimated the power of the human heart. Captured humans, those who had been taken to alien facilities, played a key role in resistance. They observed the invaders, memorized patterns, and looked for weaknesses. In secret, they communicated with others through signals the aliens could not detect. Some even sabotaged alien equipment when opportunities arose, slowing down operations and giving humans on the outside more time to organize. The aliens were baffled. On other worlds, captured populations had always complied. Humans, however, resisted even when imprisoned, often with cunning and bravery that no technology could suppress. In some places, humans had started to create makeshift weapons from materials they could find. Simple tools were turned into ingenious devices to disable drones or slow down patrols. Civilians and scientists worked together to improve defenses, sharing techniques across cities and countries. Every day, people were learning from their experiences, improving their strategies and gaining confidence in their ability to fight back. The aliens' expectation that humans would be passive was proving completely wrong. Communication and cooperation became the backbone of human resistance. Messages passed through secure networks, runners, and even coded signals allowed information to move faster than alien surveillance could track. Cities warned each other about alien movements, sharing safe routes and strategies. Farmers, workers, teachers, and engineers collaborated with military units and pilots. They were united not by orders or hierarchies, but by the instinct to survive and protect one another. The aliens could destroy buildings, vehicles, and weapons, but they could not destroy human ingenuity, empathy, or unity. As humans adapted, the aliens' frustration grew. Their advanced technology, which they had believed would secure rapid control, was increasingly ineffective against people who thought creatively, cooperated deeply, and acted unpredictably. Humans were using their understanding of the environment, improvising solutions and making choices the aliens could not calculate. Every small victory, such as rescuing a group of civilians, repelling a patrol, or sabotaging alien equipment, increased confidence among humans and further confused the invaders. Even acts of kindness became a form of resistance. When humans took care of one another, feeding the hungry, protecting children, helping the sick, they strengthened the bonds that made collective action possible. The aliens could not understand why humans would risk themselves for others, why they would share food or shelter instead of hoarding it. These simple human behaviors were fueling a resistance the aliens could not predict or control. Empathy, compassion, and loyalty were proving more powerful than any weapon the invaders had brought. By the end of the third day, humans had become something the aliens could not dominate through fear or force. Ordinary people had become leaders, teachers, rescuers, engineers, and strategists. Communities were organized, networks of communication were established, and the humans' ability to learn and adapt was growing rapidly. The aliens began to recognize that they had underestimated the species they had intended to enslave. What they thought would be an easy conquest was turning into a struggle they could not easily win. Even the aliens themselves were beginning to show signs of doubt. Some began to question the purpose of their mission, noticing the courage and unity of humans. They had seen fear, obedience, and surrender on other worlds. But Earth was different. Humans did not surrender. Humans adapted. Humans resisted, even when survival seemed impossible. The aliens were encountering something they had never faced before, a species whose power came not from weapons, technology, or numbers, but from spirit, unity, and the will to survive together. By nightfall, the humans who survived the day were exhausted, hungry, and frightened. Yet they were also stronger, more organized, and more determined. They had learned from the aliens' movements, tested their own strategies, and discovered that even ordinary people could make a difference. The streets were still dangerous, the skies still filled with alien ships, and the threat was far from over. But humanity had taken the first real steps toward turning the invasion into a fight they could endure, and eventually they realized a fight they could win. Even in the dark, people found hope. Families huddled together, sharing food and stories. Communities quietly celebrated their small victories, encouraging one another to keep going. Ordinary acts, lighting a signal fire, sending a message, or helping a stranger, became acts of defiance against the invaders. Each small act made the aliens' task harder and inspired humans to continue resisting. Humanity was discovering a new strength, the ability to rise even when everything seemed lost. By the end of the third day, it was clear that humans had become more than just survivors. They had become a force the aliens could not predict. Even the most advanced technology was failing to break the human will. Humans were learning, adapting, and fighting in ways that made the invaders reconsider their plans. The aliens had come expecting obedience, but they were met with courage, intelligence, and a refusal to give in. The humans' unity and resilience were creating a resistance unlike anything the universe had ever seen. And somewhere, high above the Earth, the alien commanders began to feel a new kind of fear. Not the fear that humans felt on the ground, but the fear of something they could not control, measure, or understand. Humanity was not only resisting, They were learning, teaching, and inspiring one another. They were unpredictable, clever, and united. For the first time, the aliens realized that they had underestimated something far more dangerous than weapons: the human heart. By the fourth day, the invasion had shifted from chaos to a strange, tense struggle. Humans were no longer reacting purely out of fear. They were taking the fight to the invaders in ways the aliens could not anticipate. Communities had grown stronger, networks of communication were widespread, and resistance movements had formed in every part of the world. Ordinary people were performing extraordinary acts every day, and the aliens were beginning to notice that something about humans made them impossible to control. Captured humans were playing an unexpected role. In the alien containment facilities, many had begun to observe the invaders closely. They watched their routines, listened to their commands, and noted patterns. Small acts of defiance, such as refusing to cooperate, misleading the aliens, or quietly sabotaging equipment, began to have an impact. Even when faced with danger, humans acted not out of recklessness but with thought, courage, and determination. The aliens, who expected compliance and obedience, were confused. Every small resistance act made the humans seem unpredictable, clever, and in a way unstoppable. Outside, humans were becoming more daring. People who had hidden on the first day were now actively planning ambushes against alien patrols. Streets that had been empty were filled with small teams coordinating movements, distracting alien drones or rescuing others. Improvised signals and traps slowed down the invaders' operations, allowing civilians to escape or fight back. In cities, neighborhoods formed defense squads combining knowledge of the terrain with human creativity. No single person led these efforts. Leadership emerged naturally from the people most willing to take responsibility. In the skies, pilots continued their brave maneuvers. Their attacks were not just about weapons. They were about strategy, misdirection, and protection. They learned to work with human signals on the ground, coordinating actions without speaking using gestures, lights, or simple codes. Alien ships that had been confident in their ability to intimidate humans were suddenly frustrated by unpredictable counterattacks. Even when shields blocked missiles, human pilots found ways to force alien ships to change formation, creating openings for others to escape. Every action sent a clear message. Humans were not passive, and they could fight smartly against overwhelming odds. The aliens, meanwhile, were starting to experience something entirely new: doubt. They had expected the humans to be fearful and easy to control, but now they saw them acting with courage, ingenuity, and solidarity. Families protected one another, neighbors helped strangers, and even children took risks to warn or rescue others. The aliens did not understand why humans were willing to sacrifice for one another, why they could stay calm under pressure, or why small communities could resist advanced technology so effectively. Patterns and calculations that had worked on other worlds failed on Earth. Some alien commanders began to question the mission itself. Watching humans cooperate and resist, they wondered how it was possible that a species so seemingly fragile could show such resilience. Reports began to circulate among the invaders of humans who did not give up, even after being captured, injured, or separated from their families. Some aliens tried to explain it as instinct or luck, but the more they observed, the less satisfactory those explanations became. Humans were doing more than surviving. They were organizing, teaching, helping, and growing stronger every day. In one facility, a group of humans discovered an opportunity. They quietly observed the schedule of the alien guards and noticed a small lapse in security during shift changes. Using only courage and clever timing, they created a distraction that allowed several prisoners to escape. This small act of rebellion had a ripple effect. It inspired other humans, created confusion among the aliens, and demonstrated that even the most heavily monitored environments were not safe from human ingenuity. The aliens were forced to increase security, which slowed their operations elsewhere. On the ground, ordinary people continued to innovate. Farmers, engineers, and workers turned simple materials into tools that could slow down or disable alien drones. Communities reinforced buildings and streets with whatever they could find. Children and elders contributed in ways that the aliens could not measure, warning of approaching patrols, signaling danger, or guiding others through hidden paths. Every action strengthened the resistance and made the invaders' mission more complicated. What the aliens had assumed would be simple obedience became a complex web of human adaptation and ingenuity. Communication remained key. Humans developed secure methods to exchange information across continents. When one area was attacked, others knew immediately and responded to support their neighbors. Warnings of alien patrols, safe routes, and weak points spread rapidly. Scientists and engineers shared discoveries about alien technology, helping others improve defenses and tactics. Civilians, pilots, and soldiers all worked together, learning from one another and strengthening the global resistance. The aliens could attack physically, but they could not disrupt the human network of cooperation. Acts of courage became legendary. Stories spread quickly of people risking their lives to save others. One man carried an injured neighbor across a dangerous street under alien fire. A group of children diverted a drone to allow their families to escape. A young woman in a city refused to leave a shelter filled with sick people, staying to protect them despite the danger. These acts were not about recognition. They were about humanity's instinct to protect one another. Each example inspired others, creating a culture of resistance that even the aliens could not understand. The aliens tried to respond. They increased patrols, deployed more drones, and attempted to intimidate humans through displays of firepower. But every show of strength was met with adaptability. Humans avoided, countered, or disrupted these attacks. Even in areas where the aliens seemed to gain ground, humans found ways to resist, escape, and fight back. Fear did not break them. It strengthened them. Every setback was an opportunity to learn and improve. By the end of the fourth day, the aliens were beginning to realize a critical truth. They had underestimated humans. Technology, weapons, and numerical superiority were not enough to dominate a species that relied on courage, unity, and intelligence. Humans could survive, adapt, and resist in ways that no machine could predict. They were resourceful, unpredictable, and capable of acts that the aliens could not understand. What had been expected to be a swift conquest was turning into a long, uncertain struggle. Even among ordinary people, resilience became visible. Communities that had barely known each other before were now tightly knit, working together to protect as many lives as possible. Families shared resources. Neighborhoods coordinated defenses, and groups of volunteers helped wherever they were needed. Humans learned to trust each other quickly, improvising strategies and solutions that no alien technology could anticipate. Every success, no matter how small, made people more confident and the invaders more frustrated. By nightfall, humans had adapted to the presence of alien ships in ways that even the aliens could not predict. Communities had established safe zones, emergency response plans, and communication networks. Captured humans had sabotaged alien operations and escaped when possible. Pilots had found patterns in alien movements, allowing civilians to move more safely. Humans were no longer reacting purely out of fear. They were organizing, strategizing, and acting proactively. The aliens could no longer assume control over a species that had learned to fight back in every way possible. Some aliens began to question not only the mission, but themselves. Observing humans, they noticed behaviors that seemed illogical from a purely strategic perspective. Humans comforted each other in the face of danger. They cooperated even when there was no direct benefit. They took risks to protect strangers. These behaviors made the aliens pause. Their calculations, which had relied on fear and obedience, were failing. Humans were something different, something the aliens could not dominate with weapons alone. By the end of the day, a sense of determination had spread among humans worldwide. Even those who had lost homes, loved ones, or safety had found strength in their communities. They had learned that survival depended on courage, intelligence, and cooperation. Ordinary people had become leaders, innovators, and defenders. The aliens had come expecting submission, but they were faced with resistance, adaptation, and an unbreakable human spirit. Above the earth, alien commanders convened. Reports of human resilience, courage, and defiance filled their communication channels. For the first time, they began to doubt whether they could complete their mission. Humans were not just surviving, they were resisting, learning, and inspiring one another. The aliens had underestimated the one thing they could not predict: the human heart. And that realization would change the course of the invasion in ways the invaders could never imagine. By the fifth day, The tide of the invasion was beginning to shift in ways no one could have predicted. Humans had not only survived the first encounters, they had adapted, organized, and begun to actively challenge the aliens' plans. Every day brought new acts of courage, creativity, and resilience, and the aliens, who had once assumed obedience, were now struggling to maintain control. Their mission to enslave humanity was encountering a resistance they could not calculate, and their frustration was growing. Across cities and towns, resistance networks were stronger than ever. Ordinary people who had never led anyone before were now coordinating groups, organizing escape routes, and delivering vital information. Farmers, engineers, teachers, and workers all contributed in ways that leveraged their knowledge of the land, tools, and communities. Civilians and military units began working together seamlessly, sharing strategies and resources. Each success, no matter how small, fueled morale and encouraged others to keep fighting. Humans had become proactive defenders, no longer hiding or merely surviving but taking the battle to the invaders. Captured humans continued to play a critical role. They studied alien technology and routines, noticing weaknesses and patterns that the aliens had overlooked. Small acts of sabotage, quiet misdirection, or the refusal to cooperate slowed the aliens' operations. Every escape or disruption demonstrated to both humans and aliens that domination was impossible. Prisoners shared intelligence with outside groups whenever possible, and these insights allowed resistance units to anticipate alien movements and avoid traps. The aliens had come expecting fear and submission, but they were met with defiance, intelligence, and courage at every turn. In the skies, human pilots were achieving remarkable feats. They had learned to coordinate with ground teams using signals, flares, and improvised communication to confuse alien ships and drones. Even when weapons failed, pilots used their skills and instincts to create openings, force retreats, and protect civilians. Their efforts were not limited to combat. They also rescued trapped humans, guided evacuations, and relayed critical information to resistance networks. The aliens could destroy structures, vehicles, and equipment, but they could not predict the human mind or spirit. Every day, pilots' daring maneuvers reminded the invaders that humans could fight intelligently and bravely, even under impossible odds. On the ground, ordinary people continued to innovate and resist in ways the aliens could not understand. Communities reinforced buildings, blocked streets, and created traps to slow alien patrols. Children played roles in warning others, signaling danger and guiding people through safe routes. Elders offered wisdom, knowledge of terrain, and strategies based on experience. Humans were using every resource available. Not just weapons, but intelligence, creativity, and the instinct to survive and protect one another. The aliens could attack, but humans' adaptability and unity made them increasingly ineffective. Humans were also learning from each other at an astonishing pace. Communication networks connected cities and villages worldwide. Information about alien movements, weak points, and strategies spread quickly, allowing communities to respond faster than the invaders could adapt. Scientists and engineers shared discoveries about alien technology, enabling resistance units to counter attacks more effectively. Even when communication systems were damaged or disrupted, humans improvised, creating coded signals, runners, and visual cues. Coordination across continents gave the resistance a strength that the aliens could not dismantle. Acts of bravery were now becoming symbolic of human resilience. A young woman guided injured neighbors to safety under alien fire. A man rescued a child from a collapsing building while dodging drones overhead. Communities organized rescues, rebuilt shelters, and shared resources with those in need. Every act, whether small or large, strengthened human morale and inspired others to continue fighting. The aliens were witnessing behaviors they could not comprehend. Humans risking themselves for others, showing empathy in the face of danger, and refusing to surrender. This spirit of courage and unity was becoming the true weapon of humanity. The aliens began to notice something even more troubling. Humans were learning not only to survive, but also to challenge them directly. Resistance units began to sabotage alien operations, destroy equipment, and interfere with supply lines. Civilians created diversions, misleading patrols and drones. Pilots conducted daring raids on alien ships, sometimes rescuing prisoners or forcing invaders to retreat. Every act of disruption undermined the aliens' confidence and made them realize that their technological superiority was not enough. Humanity was using intelligence, strategy, and sheer willpower to fight on equal footing. Even among ordinary people, leadership emerged naturally. Those with knowledge, courage, or quick thinking became organizers and guides, inspiring others to act. Communities were no longer waiting for orders. They were acting, planning, and defending themselves. Streets became coordinated defense zones. Safe houses and shelters were mapped and shared. People learned from each skirmish, improving their tactics and strategies. The aliens had assumed fear would control humans, but humans were learning faster than they could anticipate. Above the Earth, alien commanders were growing increasingly anxious. Every day brought new surprises. Humans were unpredictable, creative, and resilient in ways no machine could measure. Fear and destruction, which had worked on other worlds, failed on Earth. Humans were refusing to submit, even when captured, injured, or threatened. Their courage and unity were forcing the invaders to change plans, increase security, and allocate more resources to control a population that was becoming ever harder to dominate. The aliens began to realize that their mission might fail, not because of lack of power, but because humans could not be conquered by force alone. Resistance was not just physical, it was emotional and moral. Humans comforted each other, shared food and supplies, and risked their lives to save strangers. These acts of empathy and solidarity created strong bonds that the aliens could not break. Humans protected one another not because they were ordered to, but because it was the right thing to do. The aliens could destroy buildings, vehicles, and equipment, but they could not destroy the human instinct to care, cooperate, and resist together. Humanity's spirit had become its greatest weapon. By the end of the 5th day, the aliens' confidence was shaken. They had expected submission, obedience, and fear, but humans had shown resilience, intelligence, and bravery that no weapon could suppress. Every small victory, every act of courage, and every creative strategy made the invaders question their ability to succeed. Their technology was advanced, but the human mind, heart, and unity were proving far more powerful than anticipated. The mission to enslave Earth was faltering, and the aliens began to experience frustration, confusion, and doubt. Humans, on the other hand, were becoming stronger with every passing hour. Communities were organized, communication networks were reliable, and small groups acted independently yet in coordination with others. Civilians, pilots, scientists, and soldiers had learned to work together seamlessly. The world had discovered a collective strength born of courage, empathy, and determination. Even ordinary people who had once felt powerless were now actively contributing to resistance efforts, showing that survival was about more than avoiding danger. It was about taking control and protecting what mattered most. Night fell, but humans did not rest completely. They maintained watches, shared information, and planned for the next day. Despite fear and exhaustion, hope had grown into confidence. Humanity had faced a technologically superior enemy, survived, adapted, and begun to fight back effectively. They had shown the aliens that fear alone could not conquer them, and unity and courage could achieve what weapons could not. Ordinary people had become heroes, and their collective actions were reshaping the battle for Earth. By the end of the 5th day, it was clear that the aliens' mission was failing. Humans were learning, adapting, and resisting in ways that made domination impossible. Courage, empathy, and intelligence had become the tools of survival, and unity had become the human shield. The aliens had come expecting obedience, but they were faced with defiance, strategy, and spirit. Humanity had proven that survival was only the first step. The next step was victory, and they were ready to fight for it. Above the Earth, alien commanders exchanged reports filled with confusion and concern. Humans were no longer predictable, and their resistance was growing stronger every day. Small communities were influencing the battle on a global scale. Civilians, soldiers, pilots, and scientists were working together seamlessly. Even those who had once feared they could do nothing had found ways to contribute. The aliens had underestimated not just the strength of the human body, but the power of the human mind and heart, and for the first time, they began to consider the possibility that they had failed before the battle was even over. By the 6th day, the situation had shifted completely. The aliens, who had arrived expecting obedience and fear, were now facing something they could not control. Humans had survived, adapted, and learned to fight back in ways the invaders could never have predicted. Ordinary people had become leaders, strategists, and heroes. Families, communities, pilots, scientists, and volunteers had all contributed to a resistance so coordinated, intelligent, and courageous that the aliens were forced to reconsider everything about their mission. The dream of enslaving Earth was no longer possible. The day began quietly, almost deceptively so. Humans had learned to anticipate alien movements. Communities had established early warning systems, shelters, and safe routes. Civilians who had once run in fear now acted with precision, guiding families and volunteers to safety. Scouts moved through cities, forests, and mountains, observing alien patrols and relaying information to those who needed it most. Even the smallest actions mattered. A child signaling from a rooftop, a farmer blocking a drone with a simple device, or a neighbor quietly warning others of an approaching patrol. Every act of resistance strengthened the human network and made the invaders' task increasingly impossible. In the skies, pilots were performing feats that would have seemed impossible just days before. They coordinated attacks and rescues using every skill, every bit of courage, and every improvised tactic available. They had learned to read alien patterns, forcing ships to maneuver in ways that exposed weaknesses. Even when weapons failed or shields held strong, pilots found creative ways to distract, mislead, or protect. Civilians and pilots worked as a single force, moving seamlessly between the ground and the sky. The aliens had technology, yes, but humans had intelligence, courage, and unity, qualities that no machine could overcome. Captured humans were no longer passive either. Many had quietly escaped or sabotaged alien equipment from within. Small disruptions created confusion, delayed operations, and allowed humans outside to act strategically. The aliens had underestimated the resilience, courage, and ingenuity of those they tried to control. Even in captivity, humans refused to submit. Their defiance was calculated, clever, and persistent, forcing the invaders to devote more resources to control them, further weakening their mission. On the ground, communities acted like well-organized forces, moving with precision and protecting one another. Streets and neighborhoods were carefully defended, with escape routes planned and signals in place to warn of danger. Families helped strangers, sharing food, shelter, and medical supplies. Children played roles in communication, scouting, and warning systems, while elders offered guidance and knowledge of the terrain. Every human contributed, creating a strength the aliens could neither measure nor break. Humanity's collective spirit had become a force more powerful than any weapon. The aliens, frustrated and confused, began to experience something unfamiliar: fear. Not the fear humans had felt, but the fear of failure. Every plan they made was disrupted. Every move was anticipated. Every strategy met with intelligence, courage, or defiance. They had come to conquer, to enslave, and to dominate. But humans were proving unstoppable in ways no technology could predict. They adapted, learned, and overcame. They fought not only to survive, but to protect one another, to save lives, and to preserve freedom. Even as humans fought back, they did not act recklessly. Courage was paired with careful thinking. Every decision, whether guiding civilians, rescuing captives, or countering alien attacks, was calculated to maximize safety and effectiveness. Humans had learned from every encounter. Each failed plan became a lesson. Every small victory strengthened morale. By the sixth day, the invaders were confronting a species that had not only survived but had become cleverer, faster, and stronger than expected. Acts of heroism spread like wildfire. One young woman led a group of children and injured civilians through a forest to safety, evading alien patrols. A man guided dozens of trapped families through underground tunnels under the city, ensuring they were fed and protected. In a small village, volunteers devised a way to disable alien drones using mirrors and simple devices, forcing the invaders to retreat temporarily. Even the smallest acts, helping a neighbor, signaling a warning, sharing food, became a vital part of resistance. Every human, no matter their age or skill, contributed to a growing force that the aliens could not stop. By midday, the aliens realized that their mission was failing completely. What had been planned as a quick conquest was turning into a struggle they could not win. Their ships had suffered damage, their patrols had been disrupted, and their plans were constantly anticipated. Captured humans had escaped, resistance units were everywhere, and communities had become stronger and more organized with each passing hour. Even their most advanced weapons could not break the unity, courage, and intelligence of humanity. The aliens had expected fear to control humans, but instead, humans' fear had turned into courage, determination, and action. Communication networks among humans were now highly advanced. Cities shared strategies, coordinated evacuations, and relayed intelligence about alien positions and weaknesses. Scientists and engineers advised pilots and ground units. Civilians shared maps, signals, and resources. The invaders could destroy technology and structures, but they could not disrupt human creativity, adaptability, and collaboration. Every plan the aliens devised was met with foresight, preparation, and resistance. They had underestimated the human ability to organize, to act decisively, and to support one another. By afternoon, alien commanders convened to reassess. Their frustration was evident. They had counted on obedience and submission, but humans had proven unpredictable, resourceful, and relentless. Every failure, every disruption, and every small human victory revealed the flaw in their assumptions. Humans were not machines. They were emotional, clever, adaptable, and courageous. They acted not out of fear, but out of love, duty, and determination to protect one another. The aliens began to understand that they had miscalculated. Earth would not fall as easily as they had believed. Even as the aliens struggled, humans continued to grow stronger. Teams coordinated attacks to force alien ships to retreat, rescuing captives and reclaiming key positions. Communities repaired and fortified structures, shared resources, and taught one another new techniques to resist more effectively. Pilots conducted daring operations to protect civilians and draw alien attention away from vulnerable areas. Ordinary people, armed only with courage, intelligence, and solidarity, were achieving what no weapon could, making the invaders retreat. By evening, the aliens began to retreat. Their confidence shattered. They withdrew ships, recalled patrols, and abandoned plans to enslave the population. Their mission, once certain, had failed completely. Humans had not only survived, they had resisted, fought back, and proven that no weapon, no matter how advanced, could dominate a species united by courage, empathy, and determination. The aliens left Earth not in triumph, but in confusion, fear, and for the first time, remorse. The humans who had survived the sixth day were exhausted but elated. They had faced impossible odds, confronted a superior force, and emerged victorious. Communities celebrated quietly, helping the wounded, sharing food, and comforting those who had lost loved ones. Every person had contributed to this victory, through courage, intelligence, compassion, or perseverance. Humanity had not only survived, but had demonstrated the power of unity, resilience, and the human spirit. As night fell, people looked up at the sky. The alien ships were disappearing, leaving only traces of their presence. The world was damaged, yes, but alive. Humans had learned that survival depended not on strength alone, but on courage, cooperation, and the will to protect each other. They had faced the impossible and had prevailed. Families, friends, and strangers had worked together to protect life, showing the universe that humanity could not be controlled by fear or weapons. The aliens left Earth with something they had never expected: remorse. They had come for slaves, expecting obedience and weakness. Instead, they had found resilience, intelligence, and courage. Humans had survived their attacks, protected one another, and resisted every attempt at domination. The aliens could not conquer the human spirit, and in leaving, they carried the understanding that this species could never be controlled by force alone. By the end of the sixth day, humanity had proven itself not just to the aliens, but to itself. Ordinary people had become heroes. Communities had become armies of resistance, and the world had learned the power of courage, unity, and intelligence. Humans had survived an invasion meant to enslave them, and in doing so, they had rewritten what was possible. The aliens left with a heavy understanding that fear could not conquer a heart united by courage, empathy, and determination. In the quiet that followed, the world began to heal. People rebuilt homes, shared food and water, and cared for the wounded. Scientists and engineers repaired damaged technology and learned from what they had observed. Communities that had never worked together before found strength in cooperation and solidarity. Humanity had faced the impossible and had emerged stronger, wiser, and more united. The story of those 6 days became a story of courage, resilience, and the unbreakable human spirit. The aliens' departure marked not the